Let me ask you something. If ransomware hit your organization tomorrow, and not if, by the way, it's when, I've seen it too many times, how much would it cost you? Not just the ransom that you may get hit up on, but the downtime, the lost contacts, the clients who find out and quietly leave the business, the reputation that you spent 10 years building that takes 10 minutes or 10 days to destroy. Do you have a number? Most executives don't, and that's not an IT problem, that's a leadership problem. Here's what everyone gets wrong about cybersecurity spending. The conversation is always framed as companies spend too much on cybersecurity, there's bloated tool stacks, vendors selling fear, IT departments that can't communicate risk without the technobabble. That happens, but in my experience, the more common problem is usually the opposite. Most businesses are underspending in the wrong places for the wrong reasons, protecting the wrong things. And the ones who are overspending, they're not overspending on security, they're overspending on compliance. Those aren't the same thing. And confusing the two is exactly how you end up broke and still exposed. Let me give you an example. A small orthopedic practice that I had visited in my professional capacity. There's medical records everywhere. HIPAA compliance is required by law, and the computers with patient data sitting on them or the software tools were never locked when staff walked away from the desk, specifically the doctors. They weren't password protected. There was no timeout. They were just open to anyone walking by or a patient sitting in the room waiting for the doctor to walk in. Were they HIPAA compliant on paper? Maybe. I doubt it. Did they have a binder somewhere with policies in it? Probably. But were they actually secure? Absolutely not. And here's the thing about HIPAA audits. Almost all compliance audits, they almost always happen after an incident is reported. The audit isn't preventing the breach. The audit is the autopsy after a breach has occurred. That's the framework trap. A compliance checkbox is not a security posture. It's a liability shield that gives you false confidence while the actual exposure sits right there in the open. NIST, HIPAA, CMMC, these frameworks are very useful, but they're a floor, not a ceiling, and they were built to be adapted to your specific business, not bolted onto it like a bumper sticker. When a business goes through a compliance framework without first understanding how the business actually operates day to day, so where does the data move? Who touches what? Which systems are genuinely critical? What you get is a layer of security on top of a broken workflow. And a layer of paint on a cracked foundation is still a cracked foundation. Here's what actually happens in most organizations when they decide to do cybersecurity. They call IT. IT assesses the current environment. It recommends tools. Tools get purchased. Policies get written. A binder appears. Nobody asked, does this workflow even make sense anymore? Because sometimes the answer to a security problem isn't a tool, sometimes it's a process change that eliminates the risk entirely. I work with a group of employees who are generating significant email-based risks. Phishing exposure, we've all been phished. There was accidental data sharing. We didn't just train them and add a filter. We looked at the actual workflow though and realized these employees had no business reason to send or receive external emails at all. So we turned it off. We whitelisted the only addresses that were operationally necessary for the employees, and the problem didn't just get managed, the problem got eliminated. This is not an IT decision. That is a business decision, and it required someone who understood the business well enough to make it. Most companies never get there because no one is sitting at that intersection of business, operations, and security strategy. The executives don't know enough about security, the IT team doesn't know enough about the business, and the gap between them is exactly where the risk lives. And using that blocking email is something I probably will continue to recommend going forward after more analysis. So back to my original question. If ransomware were to hit tomorrow, what does it cost you? Most executives, when I ask that, go quiet. It's the moment they realize they've actually never thought about it Because if they had thought about it, if they had a real number attached to a real scenario, they would have made very different decisions about what to protect and how much it was worth spending to protect it. That's called a risk profile, and it's not a documented IT procedure. It is a conversation that starts in the boardroom, your leadership room, with your VPs, whatever your business structure is. What assets does the business actually depend on to generate revenue? What happens operationally, financially, reputationally if those assets go down for 24 hours, 72 hours, 2 weeks? Which risks are worth reducing, which can be transferred, maybe through insurance, through other contracts, which are low enough probability that accepting them is the rational business decision? These are business questions. They require business judgment, and the person answering them cannot be someone who only speaks in technical terms. The companies that get this right have someone at the table who can hold both sides of the conversation, who can walk into a boardroom, explain risk in revenue terms, and walk into a server room and translate business priorities into technical controls. That role used to only exist inside large enterprises with the budget for a full-time chief information security officer. Some organizations did it under CIO, sometimes CTO, but that'll be a topic for another video. So here's what I want you to take away from this. 1, underspending is more common than overspending, but underspending in the wrong places is just as dangerous as not spending at all. 2, compliance is not security. A framework is a starting point, not a finish line, and it has to go around how your business actually operates. 3, before you add a single security tool, evaluate the workflow. Sometimes the right answer is eliminating the risk entirely, not just trying to manage it. And 4, your risk profile is a business document, not a technical one. If your executives have never had the ransomware conversation, the real one with real numbers, start there. But now I want to hear from you. Has your organization ever sat down and mapped out what a cyber incident would really cost? Not what your IT team estimated, but what you as a business leader believe it would cost. Drop it in the comments or tell me if I'm wrong about something. And if you're curious why senior executives hate cybersecurity, check out this video here.